Hello and welcome to Viewpoint on Ukraine today. My name is Sam Kearley and right now I am joined by Natalia Katser-Buchkovska, one of a number of fresh faces to enter Ukrainian Parliament via the 2014 elections. Natalia, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, thank you.
Just a few moments ago when we were speaking off camera, you said you were a supporter of Ukraine's revolution of dignity. If I could ask you, what stands out as the clearest and most vivid changes that have taken place in Ukraine since Euromaidan?
Oh, well, yes, of course, I was among those who support a revolution of dignity, and after the revolution ended, I and my colleagues, we created professional government initiatives. This is initiatives of Western educated professionals who worked in Ukraine, and they decided to deliver their services for free to parliament, to government, to new elected government, and actually it was our way to politics. Actually, of course, we had, at the time, we had big ambitions to change this country, and therefore we joined political parties, political fractions, and I and my colleagues. I'm working in Energy Committee, and I'm head of Sustainable Development Subcommittee, so mainly I am dealing with reforms of energy market, especially I take care about renewables here in Ukraine, as well as promotion of energy efficiency. At the same time, I'm also dealing with economic reform, and we created in Parliament interfraction group attraction of investments.
Mm-hmm. So you're working with the economic reform?
Yes.
Yeah, so what reforms have you seen really change in the country over the last 18 months?
Well, talking about energy, it's the biggest. Energy is 30% of our economy, covers 30% of our economy. It is the biggest sector. What can be done? Of course, first of all, we tried to reform gas market. Because gas market were closed, monopolized, and all oligarchs grew up on the gas schemes. Mm-hmm. First of all, we enacted a very radical and very new law on gas market. And this law, first of all, allowed to demonopolize gas market, and it was first step in the line to reform gas market. Now we are somewhere at the middle, because we enacted law, and for instance, the cabinet took back a gas transition system, which were kept in one hands for free, and now trying to lease it on payable basis. So it's absolutely normal. This is the biggest asset of Ukraine. Gas transmission system were kept and used by free on one person. So it's absolutely unacceptable, and it was as a result of this gas market law. And the second result, we can...
So if I could just stop you for a moment. How was this law received by, you spoke of oligarchs, wealthy businessmen that control the market. How did they receive this law?
We worked on this law more than 6 months, and it was very, very tough and difficult reforms. We felt tremendous pressure, and a few of our colleagues were even they were under big pressure of these oligarchs.
This pressure, sorry, was coming from the wealthy people in the country?
From one oligarch. I will not name his. Everyone knows who actually cover gas market in Ukraine. But it was just big resistance from the system, I would say. And this law also allows us to create maybe just to start of creation of gas market. Now we can diversify for the 70% of gas supply, and we became less dependent on Russia than we were before. So before these reforms, we were dependent 100% of gas supply from Russia. And Russia, as an aggressor to our country, blackmail Ukraine, always blackmails Ukraine on the energy supply. So now we actually had small but still results of diversification. We actually have few independent gas traders, but it's just a beginning.
100% reliant on Russia, and in percentage terms, how much would Ukraine now rely on Russia?
30%.
30%, so it's gone from 100 to 30%.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and it's solution actually, it's, I suppose. And we also need now to enact law on energy regulator. It's very, very important law. We also need to decrease royalties on gas extraction, independent gas extraction company, because we need to not only to diversify gas supply, but also to increase our own capacities and to extract our own gas, which is less expensive, and Ukraine will become more energy independent country.
Okay, so one of the clearest goal of the Revolution of Dignity was to clean corruption up in Ukraine. How would you say the so-called fight against corruption is going? Are you seeing progress?
Well, I also can tell you about a number of laws which were enacted, and in this on anti-corruption. And this reform, in terms of laws, fulfilled by 100%. So we enacted all necessary law to eliminate corruption, anti-corruption bureau, anti-corruption prosecutor, so everything. But now the things is execution. So how it will be executed? It's not my reform, but I believe that we also can handle corruption not only by method of prosecution, but also by purely economical method. For instance, if we introduce competition into the market, so market will perform by itself. So competition will eliminate some corrupted schemes. For instance, when we introduce the market price on gas, so we eliminate the biggest corruption scheme. Before these changes, oligarchs steal gas at price of population, at the time 10 times less.
At the cost of the population,
yes, at the cost of the population, and population paid for their plans for rich people, and now we change the system. So everyone pays semi-market price, and only those vulnerables who need it receive personal subsidy. So we know who really receives this subsidy. This is a live person, a live family, and not some abstract people, and it was the biggest corrupted scheme in Ukraine. So we eliminate it by market method.
So you would say things are happening in the so-called fight against corruption?
Well, in terms of, we are somewhere at the beginning, honestly. I said we enacted laws anti-corruption, and we start to eliminate some schemes. For instance, we also take back an Ukernafta from one also very rich person, and now after Ukernafta pays dividends. So it's just a beginning, but we should do this work systematically, and of course, this is it's not. We are not MPs who should actually fight with corruption. This is the task for Prosecutor General, for Security Service of Ukraine. So it's their task.
Is it not the role of all members of Parliament to help the country combat corruption?
I mean, we should enact law, and we already did this. I supported our fraction and fraction of coalition. We supported all anti-corruption legislation. It's our task. We also have a supervisory task when someone asks us to check some or to make some corruption scheme public, so it's also our task. But we do have Prosecutor General Office, we do have Internal Affairs Office, also Security Service, who should execute, and who should, of course, court system, justice system. So this is the main bodies who should fight with corruption in Ukraine.
Some Western leaders and their diplomats would argue that the people in power of the judiciary and the prosecutor's office, they are not capable, or they are not willing to combat corruption. What would your opinion be on that? Sadly,
because when we voted for Prosecutor General, he convinced us he will be Prosecutor General will be there will be the first task of him to eliminate corruption, to to show all these crimes.
And would you say he is doing this?
No, now we do not see these results. honestly. And we should also, there should be the report of Prosecutor General and should decide whether he conduct his duties properly or not. And more than 120 MPs already signed on a decree on his resignation. And this is a big site for Prosecutor General to start doing things. And honestly, I am not satisfied, and I suppose Prosecutor General should conduct his duty in better way.
Okay. Natalia, that is all we have time for. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have been watching Viewpoint on Ukraine today, where we have been joined by Natalia Katser-Buchkovska, one of a number of new faces in the Ukrainian parliament. Thank you for watching.